Hello. Hi there. I am already struggling. um, just getting started already problems, but hopefully those problems are figured out now. Um, anyway, today I will be sharing with you my sixth grade homeschool curriculum choices and how it's going because we are currently using all of these choices. I never get around to doing these curriculum choices before the school year begins because I feel like during the summer I'm finalizing my decisions, and by that time it's really too late to share them. Thinking that you're gonna maybe use one of those choices that might be helpful to you. So I think it's more helpful to give you my choices kind of during the year so I can tell you how it's going, because it's besides like the head work of finding out or figuring out what you want to use for your kids and what will be best for them and for what learning methods work best for your kids and what they're interested in and what your academic objectives are. Besides all that head work, there's the heart work, and you don't know that until you start. Like, how does it feel? I found that out the hard way last year, where everything seemed fine, the schedule I chose and all that on paper, but then once I started the school year, there were some things we needed to figure out. And um, same thing again this year, since I have a high schooler now for the first time. And so I feel like it's more helpful to share these choices when I'm actually using them so I can tell you whether or not it's been good or not instead of doing this video now and then or earlier and then another video later of here's how it went. It's I want to be in the thick of it, so I give you my true feelings. And you're gonna get my true feelings. Besides all that, I don't know if you saw my last video or stream where we talked about my ninth grader's curriculum choices, what we're using for him. I also mentioned this hair journey I'm on where I'm trying to figure out what flatters me. Because I'm the kind, I don't really like to play with makeup and clothes and hair and all that. I really don't like to do it. That's not, I mean, I don't hate it, but it's not something I look forward to. It's not something that's a whole lot of fun for me. It's just something that needs to be done. And so I'm just trying to find like the look for me so I can just stick with it for a while and not have to think about it. And so that's the process I'm in right now. Of course, all the trial and error takes some work, and this is all part of my midlife crisis, as I shared, or what I'm calling it now, my midlife journey. And this is like the midlife journey hair edition. I have been experimenting with like some set. I don't know what it's called, where you roll your hair. You set your hair in curlers, and I heard the term. I can't remember it now, but anyway, last live stream, my hair's looking kind of crazy. Remind me of like on Steel Magnolias. Remember Julia Roberts' character said how her mother's hair looked like a brown football. Um, that's how I was feeling. And so I realized after that live stream that, with rollers, you roll your hair, you take it out, and I had kind of finger separated it. But really, it's better to brush it out with a brush, which seemed counterintuitive because then I just do all that work to set my hair. But actually, the the curl, like, it holds somewhat and it makes your hair more manageable, like you can put it where you want it, especially with the setting spray that I had in there before, that I put in before setting it with the curlers. And so I tried that again this time around, and I didn't love, like, it turned out even worse, even though I used the foam rollers instead of the Velcro and all that. So I had to like go in with a curling iron. I mean, probably nobody cares about this but me, but like, I need to share. I'm going through something here with my hair. I need someone to go through it with me. My husband doesn't care. I share with him, surprisingly, it's not something that interests him. I can see his eyes glazing over. So anyway, I had to go in with a curling iron, and then I was really happy with the curling iron. Like, again, this is terrible lighting. You can't see it here. I was pretty happy with that. But I realized I need to set my curlers in a different way. I kind of had them set where it was like a curler here, 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 like that along my hair, my head. But I'm gonna do them the other way, where it's a curler like here, 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 like that way. If that's making any sense, I'm gonna try that next time. See how that goes. Let me know if you have any curler tricks. I'm also wondering if I should get like the hot curlers instead. You know, the kind where they heat up and you put them in. But I don't know. I feel like I've already spent so much money on rollers and setting spray, like all that stuff. And yeah. Anyway, that's where I'm at on that hair journey right now. I think it's better than last time. That's kind of what I wanted to say. Let me know what you think. All right, on to why we are here. We're here to talk about 6th grade. All right, so my son, I have 3 boys, a 9th grader, 6th grader, and a 4th grader. And 2 of my kids are on the autism spectrum, including my 6th grader. And it's not something I want to make like a huge deal out of. I don't want to make this like the autism channel, because that's my son's, I don't want to say struggle, but that's just part of his story, his personal experience, life experience. And so I don't want to like take his story for my own for this channel. But I will mention it at times when I feel like it's important to explain like choices I'm making and how we're homeschooling and what's affecting our homeschool. But even that I'm feeling kind of icky about. So I don't know. Part of the reason I'm thinking, do I even want to continue this homeschool channel? Because I feel like it gets too much into my kids' private lives, and that's a whole other thing. But in order to be as respectful as possible to my son, I'm not going to go too deep into all that. But I am sharing that he is on the autism spectrum, high functioning, because it has affected our homeschooling in a huge way and affected some of the choices I've made. So first off, I'll just share with you, these are the subjects that we're going to go over. I will, during the replay, I will have once the replay is up, I'll have timestamps in the description box to go to all these things. And hopefully I'll get to that quicker than I did the last live stream. That's my goal. But if you're watching the replay, you're lucky. You get to just kind of skip ahead to the part that interests you. But these are the things that we're going to be going over. And starting off with math. Okay. Yes, starting off with math. So for math, we're using Math-U-See. Of course, my favorite. I love it because it's mastery-based with a lot of review, which to me is the best kind of curriculum, where you really get into it, where the kids really have a chance to not just learn the material, but practice it enough where they've got a really good handle on it, and then continue on to the next thing, while also reviewing what they've learned in the past. A lot of curriculum is either just mastery-based, so you don't have that review, which I think is important. And then you have your spiral, which is supposed to have built-in review, as I understand it. But my experience with spiral type curriculum, including math, especially math, is that they never really master a concept. They're introduced to it, they get a little bit of practice and move on to the next thing, and then eventually come back to that. But because they never really learned it well the first time, instead of just reviewing that and then learning new material, they're having to relearn it all over again. It's a huge waste of time. It's frustration inducing for my kids and for me. So I really detest spiral curriculum for math, especially. That's why I love Math-U-See. So he's doing Zeta this year. I think he's doing pre-algebra next year for 7th grade. And the decimals and percents. And, it is what it is. It's my favorite curriculum. That doesn't mean that it's problem-free. It's learning. And learning can be challenging. So I'll tell you that my son, this curriculum, it comes with videos. You can either get a DVD or you could stream the videos, which is what I do. And my kids in Homeschool Planet, we use Homeschool Planet. They all have access to their their lesson plan, their individual lesson plans, and then I put in there the links to things like videos for the Matthew C video, so they can go at their leisure without me having to set that up for them. They could just click the link and go to it, and so that's nice. But he's not loving the videos. He's not feeling like they're really teaching him. He struggles with it, and so I'm having to sit and teach him myself, and which can be tricky because it's been a while since I've seen these videos, and I want to teach it the way that they're they're teaching it, so that everything's consistent, so that later on, if they refer back to something that was taught in a lesson, my son knows what's going on. And I can get pull up, like, this is the student workbook you see here on the screen. I can pull up the instruction manual, or I can pull it out and read through it, but I just don't want to. So what I end up doing is teaching him the way I learned. And that's my favorite way of doing something. And since I'm an engineer and did a lot of math in college and all, especially, and it's math beyond just, balancing a checkbook type thing, personal finance, which is good, which is important. But, I picked up some strong opinions about how to do math neatly and in a way that's going to get you to your answer in the best way, easiest way, cleanest way possible. And so that's what I'm teaching him. And so the contrast between what they're teaching frustrates him sometimes. And so, what can I say? It's an excellent curriculum. I'm still glad I chose it because of the mastery and the review, but it's not doing what I wanted, in that he's learning from the DVD or the videos and then moving on. Doing the work himself, I'm having to go in and help him a lot. And he struggles with emotional regulation as part of his autism. And so anything that frustrates him becomes a major deal in the day for us. So this has been something that's frustrating, but I've tried other curricula with him, and none of them work better than this. This has been the best one. And so this is what we're using. And that's that. So moving on. What's the next thing? Why is this taking so long too? Okay, moving on to English. All right, so for English, English is split up into a lot of different things. Something I didn't really think about before becoming a homeschooler, how much there is to learning even just your own language. And so there's there's a subject of English and then so many sub-subjects of English. And you can get curriculum that kind of does it all, where it's just like English and it touches everything: grammar, writing, literature, reading comprehension, spelling, all the things. I prefer to tackle each of those things individually, so that I can really, part of it is for the mastery, like I mentioned before, so we can really get into it and learn because my kids learn best when they're learning the details about everything. Like, we really zero in on the nitty gritty. Maybe that's a better word than details. So like the nitty gritty on it. And then that helps me as the teacher to see where are they struggling. If you, how can I put this? Imagine looking like at a Google map, and you can look at the big overview of where you're going, like the directions. If you say, hey, I want to go to Target, and you can look at the overview, it shows you the whole path to get to Target. Or you can zero in on maybe a particular turn. Maybe the overview path would be enough for you, but sometimes you need the detail of what's going on at one specific location, and that overview isn't going to help. So you need to zoom in on a spot. And so that's kind of how I feel like with my kids. That's why I like to do each of these subjects individually, because it's easier for me to zoom in on their struggle areas instead of just doing a general English. and they're struggling, and the curriculum isn't really built for me to zoom in on something and see what's the real problem. So anyway, that's a long-winded explanation for, that's how I tend to be, for why we do these subjects separately, even though it does end up taking more time in the day, which, believe me, I've thought about changing that, but I know going the other way would just take longer in a different way, because then there will be more struggles. So this is what we're doing. For writing, my favorite curriculum of all time is IEW, all of their writing stuff. So my son's using Structure and Style 2A. He did a couple of years ago, so this is split up into 2 years. And a couple of years ago, he did the level 1A. And then we took a break from it last year. And then, so this year he's doing the second year of it. And then there's like A, B, and C. And those, if I remember correctly, those are about the source texts that are used for the kids to use with their writing, to do their outlines and all that. The A, B, and C tell like what reading comprehension level, basically. The A is the easiest, and then you have B, and then C would be like for high school. So technically he probably could have been B. I thought about doing 2B for him, but there's nothing wrong with keeping things as simple as possible when you can, because this isn't, he's not learning reading comprehension in this curriculum. He's learning about writing. So I thought, I want to make the source text as simple as possible for him, because, frustration. And he does struggle sometimes with when he doesn't really understand the way something's written. That becomes a whole thing in itself. So I wanted to keep the source text as simple as possible. That's why we're using 2A. And also then I'll use this with my current 4th grader. I'll use this next year with him, and the A level will be appropriate for him. Although actually he probably could do B, because he is gifted in languages. Believe me, he uses it against me all the time. So this is working out well. Again, there's streaming videos, and he sometimes needs my help and sometimes doesn't, but he's been doing pretty well doing this on his own for the most part. Since he already had a year of using this curriculum, it's kind of it slowly builds on itself. And so far he's doing okay with it. My favorite though. All right. So for spelling, we're using Spelling UC, and he's in the American Spirit level. If we had been doing Spelling UC from the beginning, he probably would have been in a different level. It doesn't really matter. I did have him use one of the lower levels some years ago. And then for a couple of years, we tried other spelling curricula. I tried spelling, all about spelling with him, which is what I use for my oldest son all through all the levels of it. And while that worked for my oldest son, I didn't feel like it really worked that well it worked fine for my 6th grader, but language is easier for him than it is for my 9th grader. So this is a bit easier for me, because I'm not having to sit with him every day to do spelling like I did with All About Spelling. And I say, if it's not an area of struggle for your kid, then do what's easiest for you as the homeschool parent, especially when you have multiple kids. At some point, you got to make things easy on yourself at some point. So I decided to go back to using this, even though I was like real iffy on it, because it's basically copy work. It's not like with All About Spelling, where you're learning all the different phonics. It's more phonics based. You're going to detail about all the different spelling patterns and all that, which my oldest son needs. But my 6th grader, he was fine with this, it turned out. I will say I hate the font that's used in it, especially like on the copywork pages. Like, I hate it with a passion. That font absolutely should not be used for copywork at all. I hate that. But I have found is really working well for my younger 2 kids. And I like that it's all these different stories. My 6th grader loves stories, and That keeps his attention. There's dictation in there. And I'm finding that that's working really well for me, even though he really struggles with it, with the emotional toll of dictation, because it feels like a test to him, and it's not a test. So this isn't a curriculum with tests, with a word list. It's not that at all. It's copy work. The dictation is just to help them learn. And so again, it's not like he's like, oh, yippee, spelling, but it's doing its job. That's my point. When I make curriculum choices, sometimes I feel like when I share them that I'm saying that, or that I'm being understood as saying, my kids love this curriculum choice. That's not what I'm saying. It's schoolwork. Okay. So let's give a break to ourselves when it comes to schoolwork. As homeschoolers, sometimes I feel like we get this message that our kids should be loving school all the time. It's schoolwork. Okay. It's learning. Learnings can be really difficult. It can be fun sometimes, but sometimes it's just not. And so I don't expect my kids to love all their schoolwork. I do expect them to do it. And on my end, I try to break it down for them so it's not too overwhelming, or so it's not overwhelming at all. And because when it becomes overwhelming, then they don't want to do it. That's where you get your real issues. But it's still schoolwork. They don't have to love it. And that's just my view on it. They're not going to love all of it. I don't love learning everything. I mean, come on. It's fine. It's a human experience. Okay, so handwriting. So for handwriting, he's doing, I'm sorry, I keep hitting this microphone, so it's probably like doing all sorts of things, but I forget it's there. Sorry if it's getting loud. Anyway, for handwriting, he's been practicing cursive. So for the last year and this year, we're using Script and Scribe. Their poetry penmanship bundle. So let me show that to you. Hold on. Let me pull up the web page with that on it. Okay. So, do you see it? Okay, here we go. It's 100 acre wood, and or half a 100 acre wood. Sorry, half a 100 acre wood. Half a 100 acre wood. I'm going to have all these links in the description box later on too. So once the replay's up and I have the timestamps in there, I'll have the links up. So it's from half a 100 acre wood. And I purchased this whole bundle because last year I also had a student who was learning cursive for the first time. And so even though my sixth grader, he was a fifth grader last year, was just practicing cursive, I went ahead and started him on the letter connector portion of it. And then this year we're doing the poetry, penmanship, and memorization. We're not doing the memorization aspect of it. I'm just using it for copy work again. And it's poetry. And it's some poems that we have memorized in the past. So I feel it's somewhat enjoyable. Let me see if I can show one of these others. This is the letter connector page, or a shot of the letter connector one. Is there one with introduction to cursive? That's the roller coaster right here. Oh, here we go. So like what I showed you before. Let me see if I can zoom in. I guess not, but it's illustrated some. There's a built-in memorization program you could do, which we're not doing. I just a couple of days a week I have him do one of the pages, and then once they practice writing the poem, once they get through finishing the poem, because some of these are longer than others, then there's another page like this one right here that's where they copy the whole poem onto it, and they can color if they want. None of my kids are big into coloring, so we don't do that. So it's nice that the real reason I chose this was because I wanted to use one of their, let me see if I can find it, because he loves stories. So I wanted to use one of their like history script, or like this one's hymns in history. Let me pull this up. So I guess that would be nice. That's not really the one I was thinking. I was thinking, oh, like this one, Americana. Where there's poems, picture studies, he loves history. My sixth grader loves history. And so I wanted to get something a little bit history related. And this one is. So we're really working toward using this because he's going to need to practice cursive for a while longer. And so look how beautiful that is. I love that has like some poem study and some picture study built in. So that's the plan. Once we're done with the current one he's on, the the poetry one, we'll move on to something like this. Either that or I've also purchased on Teachers Pay Teachers one with jokes, like said knock jokes, not like riddles type thing. Some riddles, jokes, they blend sometimes. So maybe we'll move on to something like that. But he does love history, so this is why I chose this. And so then in the fourth grade video, I'll go more into that. But my fourth grader, the bundle ended up working really nicely because that way I was able to get for both of my two younger kids kind of in one bundle. And it's a PDF you purchase, which I like. And so, I'm a big believer in getting the PDF for curriculum. All right. So that's that. Let's move on to what's the next thing we're working on. All right. So handwriting, grammar. So for grammar, we're using Evan Moore, the grammar for grade 6, because I think I already had the PDF for it. And that's something I love about Evan Moore, that maybe most of their curriculum, a lot of it, I think any that I've used, I've been able to buy the digital version of it. And especially for this, I like it because there's the way it's split up is there's like a grammar rule on one page with examples, like the explanation and examples and all. And then there's some like 3 practice pages for most of them, for each of the rules. And so I like to print that grammar rule separately instead of print it out as a long, like every page, one right after another, front and back. I like to print out that grammar rule separately so that he always has that refer to and not have to be, turning pages back and forth, which he hates. It really frustrates him. Frustrates me too, So I like, for that reason, I did the same thing with geography, which I'll show you in a minute, where with geography, I could print the map out separately, and then the pages, the questions are on another page, so he always has the map to refer to without having to flip back and forth. So I like getting the digital version of this. That's kind of a pro tip if you kind of think about how you like what might frustrate your kids, and even though it's a little bit of work, if it smooths the way for a little bit, even a little bit easier day, it could be worth it to get the digital version of curriculum and then print it out the way you want it printed out. So that's one reason I love this. I'm not going to say this is the best grammar curriculum. It's not. But for this particular child who, like for my fourth grader, when he's a fifth grader next year, I'm going to start him probably on Fix-It Grammar. Like my ninth grader is using, and I talk about that in the ninth grade video, which you can refer to after watching this one. But I feel strongly that my sixth grader would not love Fix-It Grammar, even though it's a long story. He loves stories. That's like one of his major things. One of the major delights he has is getting invested in a story. But I feel like it would be too... It's not loosey-goosey, but to him, it would be. He likes things, he's autistic. He likes things very straightforward, extremely straightforward. And he gets very frustrated when it's not. So something like a workbook curriculum, any kind of workbook curriculum, is going to work better than something that's supposed to be fun, So this is working out fine. It's doing the job, which is my main thing. All right, literature. So I've shared in the past how much I hate group subjects for my particular family for reasons, several reasons. But this one, it's not exactly a group subject, but I am both my fourth grader and sixth grader are using what I chose for literature this year. So it's this Evan Moore series, Read and Understand series. And when I did my academic objectives, if you do academic objectives, for language arts, you'll usually find that when it comes to literature, kids are expected to read different types of literature throughout the year and get to know different types of genres and all. And so I noticed that Evan Moore, so I was looking for something that did that. And there's, most elementary school language arts curriculum you'll purchase will have that mixture of genres. But then I noticed Evan Moore had the series. There's the fiction, nonfiction, and poetry series. So what I decided to do is kind of put them all together. So I purchased all of them, the digital version of these three. And when I lesson planned, we do one where I rotate through them. So we'll do one of the fiction stories. So the way it works is there's a story you read, and then there's, I think, 4 activity sheets that you could do with it, and we usually do all of those. There's like a reading comprehension one and a vocabulary one, and then it touches on different things, maybe synonyms or homophones or sequencing, whatever. Yeah, different language arts academic objectives that you'll find. And so on Monday, we read together the story, and then I, with them, usually do the question and answer page, which is the reading comprehension sheet. And that's really the main reason I got this, because all of my kids need to really dig in on reading comprehension. That's a weakness, referring back to the text and looking for the answer. So it's a weakness for all of them for different reasons. For one, it's because he just doesn't refer back to the text. I'm like, you don't have to guess. Go look at it. Go look for it. Not wanting to do the work of looking at those 2 pages and finding the answer. And then for others, it's because of a language disorder or, autism, whatever. There's different reasons why this is a struggle for us. So on Monday, I read the story together with my younger 2 and do that first worksheet. And then the rest of the week, they're on their own with it, unless they need my help, of course. They can always come and ask me for help, and I'll work through some things with them. Excuse me, I almost coughed right into the microphone. So that's how we're doing this. So it's not really a group subject. We're doing it together on Mondays, but after that, they're working on it independently or one-on-one with me for the most part. So one week we'll do a story from fiction. The next week we'll do a story from nonfiction. And we'll do that like 3 sets of that: fiction, nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction. And then we'll do a week of poetry. And the poetry's similar, but not as many worksheet pages for like each poem, depending on the poem. And so every, I guess, 7th week we do poetry, and then we go back to fiction. So that's been working out pretty well. The stories are interesting. I think lots of different genres. I went through, like, we're not going to complete any of these workbooks because we're using a combination of them. So I went through when I lesson planned it and picked out to make sure I had a good smattering of different genres. So like with fiction, you've got your historical fiction and contemporary realistic fiction and American tall tales and fables and that kind of thing for fiction. Then for nonfiction, you've got all sorts of articles, things you might see like in a children's encyclopedia or in a magazine or a biography or something about history. So lots of different subtypes of subgenres of each genre. And so I make sure that I went through and made selections to make sure that we touched a lot of different things, and that it was all going to be something that, or most of it will be something that my kids might find interesting, especially things like to do with animals or with history, because my youngest loves animals and my 6th grader loves history. So that's how I chose to do that. And I'm pretty happy with that. All right, for social studies now, Back to Evan Moore. You can tell I really like Evan Moore. We're using the Geography Grade 6 for this year, and this is one I already had as well, I believe. And it covers geography very well. It is, the way it's set up is each week there's a new map, and then there's 2 questions, 5 sets of 2 questions. So, and they're marked off like Monday, 2 questions, Tuesday, 2 questions, Wednesday, 2 questions. And then at the end, there's a challenge question. And it covers every geography academic objective you can imagine. So a lot of the times the questions are really simple. And so I've heard people say that, oh, they'll do it and they'll just like do it all in one day for a lesson. And yeah, you can do that, but I feel like it's kind of missing the point of a curriculum like this. I think it's valuable to only do those 2 questions a day, unless you're trying to catch up a day, maybe a doctor's appointment, or you're taking a day off or whatever. Then you might want to do a couple of days worth in one day. And that's what we do. But other than that, we stick to the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the challenge question on Friday as well. Because going back, like just doing the 2 questions on Monday after I've worked with them and we've talked about the map and whatever geography, academic objective we're covering that week, then the next day they have to go back and kind of remember that and answer the questions. And then Wednesday, again, same thing. So it's kind of like spaced repetition, if you're familiar with that concept when memorizing things, where you don't just sit and memorize at one time unless you've got this amazing memory. Just looking at it the one time is going to get you to memorize it. You go back and revisit it. If you're doing poetry memorization, memorizing Bible verses, you have to go back and revisit it until it's really in there. All those neural pathways are built. So I feel like that's the value of sticking to just the 2 questions a day for this curriculum, because it's getting I was going to say geographical concepts, but I think it's more like geography concepts, really like in there, in their brains. It's cementing that learning for them. And sometimes it takes a few weeks. It's taken my son, like latitude and longitude. I'm constantly having to remind him. But he's going to get a lot more practice with it if we just do the 2 questions a day than if he did 10 questions in one day. So that by the end of the school year, he'll really have that down. So that's working out well. I don't use that geography curriculum every year because it is a lot. And I think it's 36 weeks. So we just do that sometimes. All right. 6th grade social studies, continuing on with that. So we're doing geography. And then also for him this year, I decided not to do a typical social studies or history curriculum with him. I thought, let's just focus in on something in particular, something that I feel like is important for life. And since we're American, I decided let's focus just on understanding on the U.S. Constitution. So I found this resource on Amazon, which I'll show you. Let me go to that. So do you see it? I think it's too big. Let me fix that. All right. So understanding the U.S. Constitution. Let me see if we can see inside some of the pages. And it goes through the birth of the Constitution, the legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch, each article, the Bill of Rights, all of that. And let's see if I can see an example page. So this is an example of what he'll do. And he usually does this maybe once a week, because I have other resources that I'm using as well for this. So there's a page where that goes over whatever they're focusing on for this lesson, and then the worksheet questions. All right, so how is this working? This, when I read it, it's too small for you to see right here, but when I read like the example page, I saw that it, I would say it's more appropriate for maybe a high school student or your very precocious middle schooler when it comes to language, but more for a high school student. But I thought, well, we can still work through this. And I'm finding it's better for me to sit with him to read it because this is the first time he's done something, any kind of workbook where it's at this language level, and then it's got reading comprehension built in because he's got to go in and figure out what they're asking. And that's the other problem I have with it. It reminds me kind of the Alpha Omega curriculum, which I'm not a fan of. If you've been around for a while, I am not a fan. So it reminds me of that, where the text is excellent, but then when they go through and do the questions, it's very much a struggle. Sometimes to see, okay, what exactly are they wanting? It's not as bad as the Alpha Omega curriculum at all. So it's not as bad, but it has that element to it, which is why he gets frustrated sometimes. All right, and I don't think I had examples of this. I should have brought up these books, but in addition to this, I basically created a unit study around the U.S. Constitution, where I also purchased some graphic novels. So let's go back to this table of contents, and I try to match up the graphic novels so that he wasn't doing a worksheet every day. And we only do this subject twice a week, and I didn't want him to be every day doing one of these worksheets because I knew that would be a struggle for him. And he loves story. So I purchased a couple of different graphic novels that goes over the U.S. Constitution, like where it's being established and some elements of it. I also got one of the Who Was books. I should have brought this up with me. I totally forgot about this. Sorry. I'll try to include those in the description box below, the links to them. So I got one of the, I think, like, what is the U.S. Constitution, something like that. And so I looked to see, okay, so the beginning was the birth of the Constitution, the need for a new Constitution. So I looked in the other three resources that we're using, the books for him to read and graphic novels, and assign pages according to like where we are. I use this as a spine, basically. So we did that, but he was hating this so much, that the workbook itself, that I thought, well, let me add a video element into it. And so I did that recently. So I went through to each of these different topics and looked for a YouTube video, and I screened them that I could have him watch before getting to the worksheet, to maybe help smooth the way in regard to the worksheet. And so on any given day, he might be reading out of the graphic novels. He might be reading out of the What is the U.S. Constitution book. He might be watching a video, or he might be doing one of these. He only does one of those each day. And so I had the luxury of doing that, since we'll have this cover the whole year, being able to zero in on one topic instead of like every social studies topic, instead zeroing in on the U.S. Constitution, really able to get into it that way and spend the year easily doing that, only 2 days a week. But I'm in Texas, so we're able to do that. Look for your local state laws. Go to, like if you're in Texas, you can go to Texas Homeschool Coalition, thsc.org, or what's the other one I forget that I'm always recommending. Go look for your state laws for homeschooling. If you're in the United States or wherever you are, look for your local laws for homeschooling, and so that you're able to stay legal on it. So where I am, this is how I'm able to tackle history. And in some places, this might not be enough, or you might need to create a portfolio with certain things, or cover particular topics. But for us, for our good citizenship kind of credit, this is working out. Okay, back to the slides. All right. So something else we're doing for social studies is world history. And this is a group subject. We do it not even once a week, usually like once every other week, unless we're having like an easy week or during the summer when they're finishing up their curriculum, because we homeschool basically year round. And when there's room in our schedules, we might do this a couple of times a week. So it's Story of the World, Volume 4, and I'll show you that as well. We've been doing this Story of the World since we took a little break from it for a while, but then I went back to it. So we've done volumes 1 through 3 already, and we're on the last volume now, which is the modern age. And we've been doing this on and off, using Story of the World on and off since we started homeschooling. My 9th grader, we started homeschooling when he was in 1st grade. And so we've been doing it basically since then. And let's go look at it. It's from The Well-Trained Mind. And so, they have a lot of other resources. I don't like all their resources. But like, I really don't like the language arts. But the Story of the World, I've been liking it the way we're using it now. As you can see, here's a different volume. So this is Volume 4 that we're using. Here's Volume 3, Volume 2, and Volume 1, covering different eras. And you can see there's multiple resources for each one. You can get the audiobook, which we get. You can get the textbook. You can get the PDF of the textbook. Or what I ended up getting was they had a tablet edition, which I like because I import that into GoodNotes and then show it. I use our TV kind of as a digital whiteboard. So I mirror my iPad to the Apple TV. And that way, that while they're listening to the audiobook, they can see the words on the screen of the stories. And then we can also look at the map that's included with each chapter and go over the map before listening to the story and refer back to it and see the pretty pictures that they have in each chapter. So we can do all that. So I am not using resources like their activity book. I have in the past. They have lots of different like craft activities and things you can do with your kids, narration, questions, that kind of thing. I've done that in the past. We're not really a crafty family when it comes to stuff like that. And for Volume 3, I tried doing that again. I tried to wrap my mind around. I was like, oh, Leslie, got to do these crafts with these kids. But then none of us really liked them, so I just stopped doing it. So we listen to the stories in one chapter each time we sit down and do Story of the World, and we do narration. I don't micromanage the narration. I just have each of them get up and present what they remember from that story, and they've been doing really well with that, and they actually have fun with it. So much fun with it, I have had to set a timer now of 2 minutes. They got 2 minutes to say what they're going to say about the story. So that's been working out well. There's other resources though. Your family's probably different, so like there's a test book. We don't do tests. Let's see, there's student pages that are also, I believe, in the activity book, but this is just the student pages. What else you got here? I want to say they have there's coloring pages. The student pages, they may also have the written narration. I know at one point they had that, where they have questions and the kids will write out their answers for what they remember of the story. So we don't do all that. We just listen to the audiobook and narrate and look at the words on the screen. But that's been working out well. Although I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be ready to be done with it. I'm determined to. It's long. You could easily spend a couple of years on just one of these volumes, and we have in the past, which is why we're still working on finishing up Volume 1. We're just like almost halfway through it, but I'm determined to finish this year so we can do other world history stuff next year. All right, back to the slides. Science. Okay, science. So science is in my state where I live. It's not something that's required. So we haven't really even started on science yet for 6th grade. But again, I wanted to do something a little different for him because he does get stressed out a lot because he struggles with anxiety and like perfectionism. So I'm for him, I specifically try to choose things that curricula activities that aren't so strict, where he doesn't feel that pressure. Although I'm slowly adding some pressure in, because eventually there will be pressure for high school. There will be some normal, take a test, get a grade kind of thing. But for now, I'm trying to keep some subjects simple, and this is one of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some unit studies based on these Max Axiom books. And I can't put my hands on this. Is the first one we're going to use, and I'm actually going to create a video where I show how I'm using ChatGPT to do this, where I'm going to use, like, for example, this one, the scientific method. That's going to be the first one that we use. And I create a study where that's kind of as the spine, maybe a 4-week study on that topic, and where he reads through this and also does some other activities to learn, like the vocabulary, and to maybe do an experiment, that kind of thing. Kind of keep it simple, but where he's still learning something. But I wanted to show these books because they look so cool to me. I did use one of them in the past, this volcano one that I'm about to show you. My oldest, I made a lap book for him a few years ago, and using this book, and that worked out pretty well. So let me move this out of the way. I just wanted to show you the inside of it. So you see they're really, it's a paperback. If you have a destructive kid like my youngest, it's pretty destructive. I keep trying to remember to look in this camera here. My youngest is pretty destructive. I know he would destroy these books, but so if your kids are hard on books, this might be a struggle. Some of them I think you can get as digital books, but for this kind of thing, when it's a graphic novel, anything with a lot of pictures, I prefer to get the physical, even though I love digital books, ebooks. So you see, they're short little books. There's 4 little chapters, very nicely illustrated. You got a story there. Max Axiom is the hero of it. And so if you have a child who loves graphic novels, comic books, and all, they might really like this. And then at the end, there's a glossary with vocabulary. So I'm going to be looking at the glossary and make sure we do an activity where we focus on this vocabulary. There's this more about, I'll also refer to this, maybe work this into the unit study. And then there's some suggestions for other literature to read and some internet sites to look at. So, and an index. So, I mean, you can even work an index activity into the study. So that's kind of how these are broken up. So I've got this one, the scientific method one. I have this one on electricity. I'm excited to get into with my kids. Maybe we'll do some snap circuit stuff with that. And very nice. Let's see if this has the same setup at the back. So yeah, you have your more about, you have your glossary, read more, internet site. So hopefully you could see all that. That's what we're going to be doing this year. I'm going to create some little unit studies that are not stressful, hopefully, and have a variety of activities, and we'll spend no more than a month on each one. And when I say a month, I mean not doing it every day. Maybe 10 lessons. I don't know. I don't want to make it too big. I tend to make too big of a deal out of things. I'm like, oh, we're going to keep this easy breezy, and then I don't. I'm determined to keep it a little easy breezy and enjoyable. All right, so for Bible, for this particular child, my beautiful blue-eyed boy, I like to focus on devotionals for him instead of workbook work, even though I'm hoping to do more of that in the future, like my 9th grader is doing, so he gets a really good foundation of scripture so that he will recognize if someone's teaching him wrong. But like I said, I need to prioritize his how he feels during the school day. for like this particular child. And so actually I'm focusing on devotionals for him. So right now he was finishing at the beginning of the school year, the Louis Giglio devotionals, which he loved those because they're science-based, a little bit of a story. They learn, the illustrations, he loved everything about them. So there was 3 of them, like the Indescribable and the other ones. But he finished those. And so I had to look for something else. So he's reading this one now, Managing Your Emojis, which I thought was so cute. My kids were really into emojis at one point. So 100 devotions for navigating your feelings. He says he likes it okay. He's not in love with it like he was with the Louis Giglio ones. But we're going to finish this. And then afterward, I'm planning for him to do this devotional, Anxious for Nothing, Living Above Anxiety and Loneliness, because he does struggle with anxiety sometimes. Like I said, he gets a little stressed out. And it's written by Max Lucado, with maybe that's his daughter. I don't know. It's his co-author. But I love Max Lucado's writing. There's while I read it. I mean, it brings tears to my. He has such a way with words, where you could just, like, the kindness oozes off of the page. He has such a beautiful way of getting to the heart of it, which is where I struggle sometimes with how scripture is taught, where it's very much focused on, it seems very law-based, or on the one hand where it's very law-based, or the other hand where it's very heart-based, like very emotional manipulation type stuff, which I don't like. I don't like to see scripture twisted, and I don't like to see emotions being manipulated. So Max Lucado, I feel like he's right there in the middle, where you feel there is emotion. You feel the kindness and the love. But he's like sticks with the scripture. So I love his writing. So I'm interested to see how my 6th grader responds to that devotional. Typing. So for typing, my other kids have used different typing programs, which has been working fine for them. And my 6th grader did try using a typing program, but it ended up being like a huge failure. Like, he hated it so much. He was stressed out by, usually there's a time factor because you're trying to get your words per minute up. And anything that's time-based like that, it's not going to work for him. So, and I guess he felt like the pace was too fast, even though it probably wasn't, but he felt like it was. So I decided to create my own typing practice sheets for him, or we just go through it very easily. I don't know how well it's working, but it's better than nothing. So I have him practice like a new letter, and then all the letters he's learned so far, and then words with those letters, and then phrases, and then sentences, and then move on to the next one. So that's been working okay. Now he's saying it's going too slow. So I'm like, well, you can go a little faster if you want, but the one thing I don't have built into this is an evaluation. So I need to remind myself to sit down and evaluate how well he's actually learning these letters, and if he's using the correct letters to type each, the correct finger to type each key. I ended up printing that, something I forgot about at first, and then later on I remembered, I'm like, oh crap, maybe he's been practicing the wrong thing all this time. So I printed out a diagram. Excuse me. I printed out a diagram that shows what finger to use for each key. And hopefully he's referring to that. So I need to evaluate that. So I'm not saying this is like fantastic or anything, but this is just the route I decided to take with him, because the typing programs I was using for my others just wasn't working for him. All right, music. He does enjoy music. He's doing, did I bring this one up? No. Hoffman Academy, which is online typing lessons. So this is actually it looks like it's just graphics I grab. This is actually a screenshot of the homepage for Hoffman Academy. It's not free. I will say that. But the videos are so good. I've tried another one, which really didn't work out well for us. I talked about that in last year's curriculum choices. This one's been working out pretty well because it's digital. It's videos that they watch with instruction on how to on how to play. It goes into music theory. There's practice sessions, so they're instructed to practice. So I don't have to touch this at all, basically, unless I want them to play a piece of music. And then you can go on there and see kind of where they're at and find music that sheet music for someone at their level. And so he's really been enjoying that, and I like hearing him play when it's a piece of sheet music that he really likes. So I'm not going to have any concert pianists coming out of my house. I can just tell you that. I'd say if you're really serious about piano, you just need to have find a local piano teacher and go get some lessons, someone to really sit with them and an expert to really sit with them and help them progress at maybe a faster clip than we're progressing in piano. But for me, what's my objective for this? Just to expand the horizons, to have the enjoyment of learning, even if it's just a little bit, to be a beginning piano player, to learn a little bit about that, and having the enjoyment playing a piece of music, even if it's a super simple piece of music, and to see, and this is one of the most important things for me, to see that if you practice, you get better. And that helps in everything. It helps with studies. This is just a life lesson that if you focus on something over an extended period of time and are willing to do the work, there is improvement. And that's a life lesson I want them to have. And I feel like learning an instrument is a great way to learn that life lesson. That's how I learned to, even just to start actually studying. When I was in high school, I was like, oh, maybe I should study. And I'd been playing the clarinet and band, and I had seen that, boy, if I focus and practice, I get better. All that, it sounds so silly and common sense, but I really feel like it helped me with my studies and just realizing, maybe I should start studying. So that's kind of a life lesson I wanted to get out of piano. And so that's what that's doing for us. And finishing off with just a reminder that I do have some playlists on my channel. I have reviews of different curricula that we've used in the past. I also have other videos with curriculum choices that we've used. My past curriculum choices. So if you have an interest in seeing a little more detail about any of the resources that I shared today, let me know. And if I don't have a video, I'll direct you to the video. If you don't find it on my channel, and if I do have one that I've already done a review of that particular curriculum, but if I don't, I'll be happy to do a review of it. So let me know if you'd like to see any particular curriculum reviews of anything I've talked about today. And I'll be happy to do that for you. So be on the lookout next week for me to share the curriculum choices I made for my 4th grader and how it's going. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.